Secretary Vilsack, you come at this issue with a very personal background and story. Can you talk about that?
You know, when the general was talking about the doctors and their attitudes about prescription drugs, I couldn't help but think about my mom. I was adopted into a family where my mom struggled in my early life with prescription drug addiction and alcoholism. And it was something that was the kind of thing that we did not want anybody to know. As a young person, it was my feeling that my mother was weak, that she could overcome this, that she could just make a decision not to drink and not to take these pills. I didn't know, didn't understand, didn't appreciate that this was an addiction. Fortunately for her, and fortunately for our family, on Christmas Day 1963, she made the decision to do something. She had tried taking her life several times. She had reached that point where she was going to go down one of two roads. She looked to her faith, and most importantly, at that point in time, there was somebody to help. She had a long-term treatment plan that she went into. There was a community that she came back to that was supportive. She had AA meetings, she had sponsors, she had people she could talk to on a regular basis. She had a family that ultimately began to trust her and believe in her. And she taught me a valuable lesson. One, not to give up on someone that you love and something that you care about. And two, not to make a judgment that this is in fact a disease. It is in fact something that is incredibly difficult for the individual and the family. That's why it's so important and why I'm interested in rural areas. When that person in rural America reaches the point that my mother reached, how frustrating will it be if that individual turns around seeking help and it's not there because they happen to live in a rural community?
I want to follow up on that, but I wanted to ask you another question first, which is when you meet people who are struggling with addiction, what do you say to them to try to help remove that feeling of stigma, to help remove that shame? What do you say to them?
Well, I give them the example of my mom and the fact that I've learned and that they need to understand that there are many people willing to help, that they cannot and should not feel that they have to do this by themselves, that this is not a test of character. This is essentially getting you in the right place with the right people, focused on a plan, a long-term plan, a day-by-day plan to lead you to a better life, and that it is incredibly possible if you have the treatment, if you have a community that is supportive of you when you get out of that treatment facility. The challenge we have now, and I think the Surgeon General would agree, we have treatment facilities, but sometimes it's not something you can do in a couple weeks or a month. It may take a longer period of time, and that gets back to societal judgment and whether or not we're willing to provide the resources to make sure that those people who need long-term concentrated effort are able to get it and secure it. One of the good things about the Affordable Care Act is that we're now beginning to change the way in which we reimburse and pay for these services, whereas before it was treated as something separate and distinct from cancer or heart disease. Now we're supposed to be looking at these treatments in the same way, and hopefully that opens up opportunities that didn't exist before.
Because when people do finally decide that they're going to seek help, they often face a long wait.
They often face a long way, oftentimes fail multiple times, and we have to be patient, and we have to continue to be with them and stick with them. And this problem is getting larger. I mean, we now have 2 million folks, as the general indicated. There was an NIH study that just came out that said that 4 million Americans have admitted to misusing opioids. And now, according to the Kaiser Foundation, 44% of Americans know someone. This is an issue that's so broad that you cannot, in this room today, I'm pretty sure by raising a hand, we could find virtually everyone who knows someone close to them that is challenged with or dealing with this. So it is pervasive. And again, put yourself in the position of someone in a rural community where there are no mental health services, there are no professionals. There is not the opportunity to come out and say, hey, I've got a problem without people being judging you. Your job is at risk. How much harder it is in those rural, remote areas. And that's why it's important and necessary for us to make a commitment, not just in urban and suburban areas, but also to include rural areas.